Yo, what's up? I'm Brian here doing another video for you guys, and this time we're going to be talking about some new Transformers reveals that Hasbro just decided, hey, here you go, here's a couple of reveals. And these are the last two Legacy Wave 1 figures that we have known about for a while to be shown, because we had that big poster, but these two figures were not necessarily revealed. Also, the Hot Rod is going to continue into the Legacy lineup. That's another core class figure that's going to be shown in Wave 1. And there is a reason why I'm specifically talking about that, but there seems to be no specific image for the Legacy line on that Hot Rod because we already know we're getting it in Kingdom. It's going to be repacked in the Legacy lineup, so Hasbro decided, we don't need to reveal it. But we've got a couple of Decepticons, and that's awesome. The first one we're going to talk about is Skywarp. Now, obviously, this is going to be a repaint of the Starscream before it, and I thought the Starscream was alright. It's not really my favorite thing. There's a few tricks in the transformation that everyone seems to like that are a little more complicated than I really necessarily want, but otherwise, it's an okay figure. And I don't mind more Seeker repaints. I think that's fine because that's a classic thing from the original Transformers. And I think the black and purple definitely suits it very well. They also said that it's to continue your Seeker collection, so I would imagine that a Thundercracker would be down the road, unless they want to do the same thing they did with Robots in Disguise and just leave out Thundercracker for some reason. But I imagine that we're going to get a Thundercracker, whether it's an exclusive or it's going to be next year, because if you look at the listings for retail figures of this year, they didn't really say or specify that we're going to get a Thundercracker down the road, but I imagine that at some point we're going to get a Thundercracker. You can also see that little weapon attachment on the front. It's a weird thing. We're going to talk about it more in the robot mode. There is a kind of a reason why that exists, but it's not really the best thing for me. Anyways, taking a look at the robot mode. Again, it's a black and purple version of Starscream, so there's not really a whole lot to talk about. I will say that I don't like the unpainted crotch, and it's the same thing with Starscream, but it's not as bad here as it is on Starscream. I think it's because he has much more broader colors than Skywarp. Skywarp's a lot of black and silver, so I think it fits in okay. It's not as bad, but it is something that's there. I do like the purple applications on the lower arms and the feet. I think that's nice. I would like to see a little more purple, maybe in the wings. Could have some of the stripes, but otherwise, you know, the color scheme is very similar to that of Starscream. Unfortunately, no painted nipple turbines. They're just silver, but, I mean, they're silver on Starscream anyway, so what? You're going to paint it another silver? It'd be kind of weird. Now, what I don't like about this is the fact that he doesn't come with null rays, or at least that seems to be the case when you look at every single image of this figure. If you take a look at him in the package, if you take a look at him in the robot mode or the alt mode, they leave out the null rays, which leads people to suggest that he's not going to come with them. And that's unfortunate because that's something that Skywarp should have. I mean, it's an existing mold. It's shown on the Starscream, so I don't know why they left it out, except that they wanted to put the budget onto this taser clamp thing. It looks dumb to me. I don't care if there's a reference out there. I don't care if it's from the cartoon from one specific episode. It looks dumb to leave out the null rays entirely just for this thing. It's got a gimmick that rounds off with the other core class figures, but it looks so dumb with this figure. I don't like it. So that's the one thing that really distracts me. I've got the Legends class, the Skywarp from the Combiner Wars, I believe it came with. Yeah, I think it was Combiner Wars line. So maybe I'll attach those, but what I will say is the package does look pretty good. Because Skywarp is black and purple, he vibes well with that package art, and I think that this is one of the best looking packages to date for any of the Legacy figures. Now, taking a look at Iguanus. So, Iguanus is based on a Pretender figure, but they're doing a different thing with it. So, originally, especially with Iguanus, you would take the Pretender shell and open it up, and then there you get the actual Iguanus character. And he would hide in the shell as like this monster, or some of them would be human-type characters, and they would hide within the humans or beast or whatever. And inside, with that core figure would also transform into some sort of vehicle. So you get a fully functioning Transformer inside. They weren't necessarily the best thing. Some of them were kind of cheap or just simple in the way they convert, especially with some of the jets. But at the very least, you got something that would actually convert. Now, with this line, what they decided to do was have the alt mode, but then the Pretender shell would be the Transformer itself. So you wouldn't have that separate robot mode, you would just have the Pretender shell as the robot itself, and then the alt mode. And some people don't like that. Some people would definitely prefer the original transformation or the original Pretender shells. Me, honestly, I was thinking that what they would do, because it is core class, was they would just do the core figure, but I think that this isn't really necessarily a bad idea. I do understand where people are coming from, but what I'm thinking is that these Transformers will be able to transform into something that will disguise with all the humans and monsters and aliens and whatnot, and then they would transform into an alt mode. So they would still be a Transformer, but still be a Pretender. So I thought that was an interesting take. I'm not sure how I feel about the execution, though, because this bike mode does look very weird. You can see that it's got a weapon attachment on the top, painted in gold and red, and we'll touch on that in a little bit, but the overall bike mode is just, again, very simple, but, you know, it does remind me of some of the Pretender figures. You know, the last time we saw Pretenders was these little trinket figures, and I was alright with them, but they're not really fantastic either. So to have something like this that's more closely resembling those original Pretender characters, I don't necessarily mind too much. Now, when you take a look at the robot mode, you could definitely see where the Iguanus character comes into play. You could also see that a lot of the kibble forms the backpack, which some people might not like, but I actually think that might be kind of a clever thing to do, because it's kind of like he just has his alt mode strapped to his back, and he would transform with it. Kind of like how Spike Witwicky and Daniel and whatever would transform from their exosuit. You know, it wouldn't be them, it would be something that they would carry with them. So maybe it's something like that. But what I will say is something that I really like about these is take a look at the initial figure itself. It's a fully posable version of a Pretender character. And I thought that was kind of cool because the original Pretender figures, because they were just shells, all their articulation would just be their arms move. That's it. That's all you get. So for this, you get the ball joints in the arms, you get the head. I imagine the head moves. It kind of doesn't look like it, but I imagine it will. You get the elbow motion, you get the hips. It looks like there's also a waist joint. I might be wrong about that. You get the knee, and then you also get a foot joint. You can see the ball joint behind there. And yeah, I think it's an interesting take on the Pretenders. I understand, again, where people are upset with it. I'm not personally upset because I'm not too attached to the Pretenders, and I can kind of see what they're doing. I'm not saying that everything is done well, but I get it. I understand what they're doing. And you can see that golden weapon. If you take a look at the packaging art, you can see that, I mean, I love the bike mode, by the way, but the packaging just shows that weapon, and then Skywarp, you see the weapon. But if you take a look at the Hot Rod packaging from the Kingdom line, I didn't bring up the photo, unfortunately, but the Kingdom Hot Rod shows all three weapons combined. So Hot Rod's weapon would be the blade of the sword, and then Skywarp and Iguanus, their weapons would combine to make the hilt of the sword. And I don't like that, because it just seems like all the other figures, Skywarp and not so much Iguanus, but still at the same time, are hindered because of an extension of a sword for Hot Rod. I don't like that. They should have their significant weapons, especially when Skywarp has been cheated out of null rays for that. I don't get it. It doesn't seem like a gimmick that needs to be there. I guess it's because they wanted to implement some sort of weapon combining gimmick, much like how some of the larger figures do it, because it seems like you'll be able to combine different weapons and make different configurations, especially with that Skid's weapon. So I do kind of understand that, but I think that core class could have just been left off from that and it would have been totally fine. It does also kind of remind me of some of the original Cyberverse weapons, not from the show Cyberverse, but when Prime and Dark of the Moon did the Cyberverse figure, most notably with Transformers Prime, they had weapons where they had a bunch of different ports and holes where you can seemingly combine them in different configurations. So maybe that's also the inspiration. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. It's just a thing that's there. Honestly, it could have been left out and we would have been fine. So, here's a question I pose. I'm curious to see what else you would like to see in the Pretenders line. Definitely Thunderwing. I think that would be incredible, especially if they do a big Thunderwing. I think that'd be very nice. I'm curious to see more of these. I think they'd be kind of cool. But, yeah, the alt mode is definitely weak, but I understand why it's weak looking. If you look at the original Pretenders, you know, it kind of makes sense. But, yeah, the weapon choices, not the best. I think we could have done better if it was just left out of that gimmick. And another thing that I wanted to point out is that in the Studio Series 86 line, we're also getting a core class human, so these could fit in scale with that character. So, you know, just something to think about. With that out of the way, what do you guys think? Please comment below, let me know. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and all those fun doodads. And I will see you guys next time.
AllSpark TV. Now that's just prime.